I
All
love
right,
it. I
Joey,
love
take
it.
it away.
Oh, Robert, well, thank you so much for the kind words of introduction. And what I'm sure all of you on the call know is what a humble guy Robert is. What he didn't share is that he and his company were a featured case study in my first book about creating remarkable customer experiences, because they are just such an amazing organization and amazing people. And I've really enjoyed getting to know Robert over the years and be friends as well. Just for a little context setting, what I thought we would do today is about 40 minutes of me presenting research case studies, examples about remarkable ways to think differently about the experiences you're creating for your employees. And then I want to open it up to free for all Q&A. And the way we'll do this is, my rule for Q&A is, if you have a question that you think I might be able to provide an answer to that you'd like to hear, you go ahead and drop it in the chat, and when we get to Q&A, I will jump in and share my best answers that I can come up with for that. Any question is fair game, and then we'll wrap up with about 2 minutes of some free prizes and bonuses at the end, because you can't end a conversation like this without giving away some prizes. So that's kind of the general gist of where we're going to take things. So what I'm going to do is jump into a shared screen here, and Robert, my request of you would be to let me know when you can see the screen, so I know we're good. Hopefully you see the title screen for our conversation today.
You're good? Yep, you're good.
Perfect. Thank
Sorry.
you.
Yeah,
All right.
I was on
So,
mute. I was following
no,
my
that's all good.
instructions.
That's all good.
Yeah.
For a moment there, I was like, and
I
they're
was
off.
giving you like 2 thumbs up visually. So
I appreciate that. So, I am super excited to be here, as I said, to talk about this experience that every single business owner, every single business leader on the planet is having right now. And that is the challenge of navigating the employee in the workplace conversation that is such a fundamental aspect of every business's operation. How we think about that now and in the future is probably one of the biggest challenges facing leaders today. And I want to ground our conversation by thinking about the time we first heard this phrase, or first came across this phrase, the great resignation. Maybe you were laying in bed doom scrolling through social media and you saw a link to an article about it. Maybe you were sitting in a conference room talking about what kind of challenges your business was going to face in the years to come, and somebody mentioned, well, what about the great resignation? Or maybe instead of seeing it or hearing it, you felt it. And you felt it when a trusted, long-term, valuable employee came to you during this time period and said, I need to go. I need to give my notice. The entire landscape for work changed as a result of COVID, and we can dive into that more in a more detailed way in the Q&A. But in the time leading up to this, I was doing a lot of research for my book, Never Lose an Employee Again. Now, I had signed the contract to write this book before COVID. COVID comes along. I went to my publisher. I said, stop the presses. We got to wait, because I felt that the landscape was about to change in a way that it had never changed before in the course of human history. And I think the data shows that that is indeed the case. I'd like to start our conversation by diving into some shocking statistics that we unearthed in doing the research for the book about the state of employee experience today. I'd then like to present a framework for how you might think differently about the experiences you're creating for your team members. And then I want to close by giving you some examples of world-class organizations that are creating the kind of remarkable experiences that keep their people engaged and retained for the long term. First of all, some shocking statistics. The research shows that across all industries globally, online and offline businesses, product and service businesses, businesses that focus domestically, businesses that focus internationally, approximately 40% of new hires will quit before the 1-year anniversary. 40%. These numbers are absolutely staggering. But what's even more shocking is that 22% on average will quit in the first 45 days. If we look only at hourly employees, that number skyrockets to 50%. 50% of hourly employees will not make the 45-day anniversary of working for your organization. And as if those numbers weren't bad enough, there's a group of people that will come to work for the first day. They'll spend the day with our team. They'll go home that night and never come back to work again. 4%. 4% of all hires work for one day and then they quit. What was more surprising to me than these numbers that the research unveiled was that the typical business owner had no idea what their percentage was. They didn't know how many people were quitting, and more importantly, they didn't know how quickly they were quitting. And the reason why this is a huge problem is because when employees quit and quit quickly, there is a huge impact on our business. Number one, we don't get the opportunity to recoup the cost of hiring that person. All the hard dollar costs, posting job listings, ads, having a subscription to Indeed or LinkedIn or whatever you're doing to kind of drive new talent and get people to apply to your firm, but also all the soft dollar costs of taking the time to interview them, going through background checks, taking them through your entire hiring process. We don't recoup the cost if the employee doesn't stay long enough to provide the value to the organization to cover those costs. Additionally, we have no productivity. It'd be great if employees showed up for the first week on the job ready to go, firing on all cylinders, but the practical reality is they don't. And if we don't have that productivity from the team members, we never have the chance to reach profitability with our team. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the thing that really hurts us is employees leaving, and employees leaving quickly decimates morale. It usually works something like this. Let's say Robert's the new employee and he comes to work for us and he works with us for about 3 weeks, and then suddenly out of the blue, he quits. And so I turn around and I say to Barb and I say to Stephen, hey, Robert left, but we're going to need you to pick up the slack for him. Don't worry, we'll hire someone quickly to wait a second. No, we won't hire them quickly because that's what happened with Robert. We hired too fast. We're going to take our time to hire the right person for the job. So you're going to have to work doing 2 jobs for a little bit longer, but don't worry, it'll all sort itself out. Now, we're not going to give you a pay raise, nor are we going to give you a bump in title, but hey, take one for the team and it'll all work out okay. What happens is those employees who are left behind then go home and say to their spouse, their significant other, their roommate, what did Robert know that I didn't know? Why was he here and then he left, and he left so quickly? Maybe I should be polishing my resume too. When some employees start to leave, more employees start to leave. And the research actually shows that when high performing employees leave, it's a double whammy in that the high performers in your organization also think they should leave, but the low performers in your organization think, well, I should stay. So there's more opportunity for me in the future. And what happens is we have a huge brain drain in our best and our brightest leaving, and leaving behind the people that are maybe not our top performers that end up taking up a higher percentage of our overall employee base. As if that wasn't bad enough, it's actually even worse than that. And I know some of you are thinking, Joey, I came to this conversation today hoping to get some ideas to feel uplifted. Why are you dragging me down? Well, 2 more statistics to just ground our conversation. This isn't just a discussion of taking care of our people. While it's certainly important to love on our employees and to treat them right and to build morale and to build culture, when we are losing employees, it impacts our bottom line in an unbelievably significant way. In fact, all the research shows that the cost of replacing an employee who has left is somewhere between 100 and 300% of that employee's annual salary. 100 to 300%. So you have a $50,000 employee. If they quit, we're going to spend somewhere between 50,000 and 150,000 getting a new person in that seat. And that's before we start to pay for that new hire's benefits or salary. So this is just the cost of getting someone in the seat. This is hugely impactful on our profitability and our operating costs. As if that wasn't bad enough, the research shows that right now, currently, approximately 65% of Americans are actively looking for a new job. 65%. So the question I would ask you is, which members of your team, which 65% of your team, are you okay with them not being part of your team anymore in Q1 of next year? Because that is the landscape that every employer is currently facing. Now, the good news is there's a solution, and the solution lies in this graphic, or more importantly, rethinking our experience of this graphic. So you might have read a business book at one time or attended a training seminar where they talked about the employee journey and how it goes from the beginning over here where we have a job posting and application process and interviews and going through the hiring process until we eventually come to that person being hired. Now, the problem I have with this graphic is it over indexes on the left side of the image. How do we fill the funnel? How do we recruit? How do we get the right number of candidates to apply for the job? Instead of spending our time on this side of the graphic, the right side, what do we do after they accept the job offer? What kind of intentionality, effort, and focus are we putting into the relationship once someone decides to become an employee and begins working for us? It all comes down to that first 100 days. If we get the first 100 days right, we can have long-term engaged employees. The results of paying attention to this time are absolutely incredible. But don't just take my word for it. Research commissioned by Glassdoor shows that if an employee has a strong onboarding process, if they go through a process that is a strong onboarding process, it will improve new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%. Now, the next logical question might be, well, Joey, what's a strong onboarding process? The crazy thing about the research is they never define it. They let the employee define it and they say, hey, did you have a strong onboarding process? And if they say yes, they look at their retention and they look at their productivity, and here are the results they get. In fact, the Department of Labor confirmed these results by finding that 69% of people who had a strong onboarding process stay for a minimum of 3 years with an organization. 69%. So all we do is have to create a strong onboarding process, a process that looks at that first 100 days of the relationship and lays a foundation upon which we can build a long-term client experience and client relationship. Now, where it gets interesting is we look at the typical amount of time that an organization spends onboarding new hires. 58% of companies globally spend less than 1 week onboarding new hires. So let me get this right. We're going to bring in a new hire. We want them to be part of our culture. We want them to contribute. We want them to be productive. We want it to lead to profitability. We want them to do the job. We want them to be a team player. And we're willing to invest a whole week to have that happen. It's crazy. No wonder people are running out the back door as quickly as we bring them in the front door, because very few organizations, in fact, less than 15%, are spending 100 days or more thinking about making that employee an actual contributing member of their team, a valued member of the culture. See, I believe there are 6 tools we can use to create the kind of remarkable experiences that will keep our employees engaged and retained for the long term. These are the 6 tools. And with your permission, I'd love to go through each of these. And as I do, what I'd like you to be thinking about is, how are we currently using these communication tools? Are there maybe some tools we're overusing or underusing? And start to let your mind open up to the possibility of using some of these tools in a different way, or maybe starting to use them for the first time ever in your organization, at least as it relates to the employee experience. The first one is in-person interactions. I don't know about you, but if there's anything I learned during the COVID pandemic, it's that I had been taking my in-person interactions for granted. And a place where we saw that rear its ugly head the most was the workplace. Everybody suddenly had to work from home. Now, some people were excited about that. Some people weren't. But the reality is we got used to, because we were forced to, not being around each other and being in close proximity to each other. And now we have so many organizations saying, we got to get back to the office. We got to return to work. I take offense at the concept of return to work because people have been working all along, but let's say return to office. The challenge with return to office initiatives is the employees don't want to come back. And the reason they don't want to come back is because, let's be candid, it wasn't that great of a place to work at in 2019. There weren't a lot of compelling reasons to come to the office. And now, as organizations are trying to push people out of their homes back into offices, the employees are revolting. And we're only going to see more of this in the future. It's also the case that many of your competitors are now saying, we're okay with remote work. And now we're seeing a war for talent based on where I go to work that is even more important than how much I get paid, what my title is, or what my role and responsibility is. We've got to think strategically about our in-person interactions with our employees. We then come to email. How many of you wish you were getting more email? Yeah, I'm guessing none of you. And yet, this is the number one tool that we use to communicate with our employees at most corporations. We send them emails and we expect this to have this connective experience to really make people feel like they're part of the team as email after email after email comes into their inbox. I'm not opposed to email. I'm opposed to you thinking that email is a great way to build a personal and emotional connection. We need to think differently about the type of emails we send our employees. Now, some of you are saying, well, Joey, you don't understand. Our shop runs on Slack, or we have Teams. Folks, Slack and Teams is another way to say email. It's not anything different. It's a clogged electronic inbox that people feel overwhelmed by. We can do better, and we need to do better. We then come to mail, the third tool we could use. Now, what's fascinating, at least for American companies, and this exists in most jurisdictions around the world, as an employer, you are legally required to know the physical mailing address of your employees. And yet, most organizations don't use that mailing address. They never send anything to their employees, or if they do send something, it's just sending them tax documents or pay stubs, things that they're not excited to receive anyway. Why is it that we have direct mail programs for our customers? We use direct mail to prospect to people. We love sending gifts. We love receiving gifts. The mail works really well, whether we're talking US Post Office or FedEx or UPS, but we rarely communicate with our employees at their homes. We rarely communicate with them in their castle, their place, where they spend the majority of their time. We can think differently about how we use mail. Next comes the phone. Now, this is an interesting one because many organizations are currently using phone to communicate with their employees. It usually looks like one of two scenarios. Scenario number one, texting a message. It's 9:40. You were supposed to be here at 9. Where are you? Not an exciting text to send or receive. Or we see this message. Jane is unable to come into work today. We need you to take her shift. Send, quick, shut down the phone. And the reason we do that is because we don't want the response back saying, I'm not available. In the research, we find that north of 70% of employees wish their employers would communicate with them via text, via the phone. And yet most employers aren't doing that. There's a huge opportunity to change the type of communications and interactions we have with our people by incorporating the phone. The fifth tool that we come to of the 6 is video. Now, many of you use video very intentionally and very strategically in marketing to your customers. You have videos showing your projects, showing your services, showing the different things that you offer the world. But most of us aren't using video with our employees, or we're certainly not using it intentionally. The ability to create an individualized, personalized video and send it to a member of your team creates a unique digital artifact, proof that they matter, proof that they are valued enough that you would take your time to send them something that not only they can watch and have an emotional connection to, but that they can save and share with a loved one or look back on when they're having a tough day as a reaffirmation of their role in the organization and how much they are seen, heard, and valued. And last but not least, our sixth and final tool, gifts. And pro tip here, I'm not just talking about things with your logo on them, okay? There are times when giving someone something with your company logo on it can feel like a gift, but there are lots of times when it can feel like just a promotional tool. We want to be more considerate with how we think about gifting and rewarding and acknowledging our team members. And we're going to give some creative examples of how you can do that. See, I want you to create a better employee journey. I want you to take this version of the employee journey and eliminate it from your thinking. Which brings us to the second major part of our conversation today, which is a framework for thinking differently about the experiences you're creating for your employees. See, I believe there are 8 phases to the employee journey. And with your permission, I'd like to go through each of those phases to set a context for how we might want to think differently about where we can use those 6 communication tools, how we can use those 6 communication tools, and what that will do to propel an employee from the phase of the employee journey they're in to the next phase where we want them to go. The first of the phases is the assess phase. This is when a prospective employee is trying to decide whether or not they want to come work for you. They're assessing your organization. We're assessing them as a candidate as well. This includes our job listings or our job postings. This includes the careers page or the About Us page on your website. This includes the employee who's going to look and see who else they know that works at your organization and reach out to them on LinkedIn to say, hey, what's it really like to work there? It also includes their submitting of a resume or an application and going through the hiring and interviewing process with your team. This process can be quite lengthy as both parties are assessing what the relationship is like. And the trick in this phase is to do our best to preview the actual experience of employment as part of our interview and hiring process. We then come to the accept phase, phase two. In the accept phase, we, the employer, extend an offer to our desired candidate. And if we're lucky, that candidate accepts our job offer. They sign on the dotted line. They officially transition from being a prospective employee or a candidate to being an actual employee of our organization. Almost immediately after signing that agreement, they go to the next phase, the affirm phase. Now, I'd be willing to bet that the majority of you are familiar with the concept of buyer's remorse. Allow me to introduce you to a concept you may not be as familiar with: new hires remorse. It's the exact same thing as buyer's remorse, but instead of being in a customer context, it's in an employee context. And this is the scientifically proven experience that a new hire has immediately after accepting your job offer. And that experience is they begin to doubt the decision they just made. In the affirm stage, we have to address this new hire's remorse by affirming their choice, by letting them know that they made the right decision and that working with us is going to be incredibly positive for their long-term success and career. We then come to the activate phase, phase four. The activate phase is the only phase in the 8 phases that is but 1 day in duration. And the activate phase occurs on the very first day on the job. It's not the first day of the 100 days, but it's the first day on the job. And in the activate phase, we want to remember the immortal words of country music legend Bonnie Raitt when she says, let's give them something to talk about. See, we want to create an experience on that first day at work that is so remarkable, that is so memorable, that is so significant that when that person gets home and their partner, their roommate, their children, their parents, their friends, whoever they know, whoever's the closest people in the circle of their life says, how was the first day on the job? That they have something to talk about, that they have a story to tell, and a story to tell positively as they explain what that first day at work was like. We then come to the acclimate phase. As a pro tip, this is where most organizations start to fall off the rails because the acclimate stage begins on day 2 on the job and lasts for weeks or even months as your new hire gets used to their role, their responsibilities, the other relationships that they're going to need to maintain within the organization. This is them learning the ropes. This is them getting familiar. And the problem is most organizations take an employee and push them into the deep end after maybe a day or 2 or 3 of training and expect them to be able to swim like an Olympian. We need to hold our employees' hands while they acclimate to our way of doing business, while they get used to our communication cadence, while they figure out what it is they're supposed to do here and how they can provide the most value. We then come to the accomplish phase. Now, the accomplish phase is really interesting because it's when the employee achieves the goal they had when they originally decided to come work for us. See, every employee has a vision of what they're hoping to accomplish in this new role. And it's not just to earn a paycheck. Yes, they want to earn a paycheck, but they've got a bigger idea of what a new title will be, what new roles or responsibilities will be, what it will be like to get new skills, how this will serve as a place where they can grow their career, finish their career, a stepping stone to the next part of their career. Every employee has a goal they're hoping to accomplish. The challenge is most employers have no idea what that employee's goal is. And not only do they not know what the goal is, but they're not doing anything to track progress to that goal, nor celebrate with the new hire when they achieve that goal. If we want to lead and make it to the final 2 phases of the employee journey, we have to acknowledge and celebrate their achievements as they work through the things they're trying to accomplish within our organization. We then come to phase 7, the adopt phase. This is when the employee becomes loyal to us and only us. They're committed. They're bought in. They are part of our culture. And if And only if we've gotten our adopters and they feel fully nurtured and taken care of and seen and valued and appreciated, do we have the right, the privilege to hopefully escalate them to the final phase of the 8-phase journey, the advocate phase, where our employee becomes a raving fan singing our praises far and wide. Now, if we've done our jobs right, this employee will go on Glassdoor and write reviews unprompted. When we have new positions available in the organization, they'll recruit the smartest, best, most talented people they've ever met or known to come be part of the team. Why? Because they're advocates. They're happy to advocate for us. Now, one final thought on the 8 phases, and this one is meant to make you aware of a challenge that many organizations face. Anytime you promote an employee or an employee switches positions within your organization, they go back to the beginning. They go back to that first phase, that assess phase, where they decide, is this a promotion I really want? Okay, I'll accept the promotion. Oh my gosh, what was I thinking? It's so much harder than I thought. How am I learning the ropes? Nobody's here to teach me. I wish I could go back to that old job. If we don't pay attention to where our employees are in the cycle and how we continue to throw them into new levels of the cycle, rinse and repeat style, as they move up the ladder or move throughout our organization, we're missing a very valuable opportunity. Now that we have an understanding of what the 8 phases are, I'd like to conclude the last part of our presentation by talking about some companies that are world-class in each of the 8 phases, giving you examples of things they are doing using the 6 communication tools to create remarkable experiences for their employees that not only honor the phase they're in, but lay the necessary groundwork to move them to the next phase. That first phase, as a reminder, is the assess phase, when a prospective employee is trying to decide whether or not they want to come work for us. Now, here's the thing I'd love you to remember in the assess phase. See, we all think that we're special, we're unique, we're different, that we stand out in the crowd. But to the typical employee looking for a job, it feels like a lot of noise. It feels like a lot of similar noise. They're not exactly sure how to discern the differences between one potential job offer and the next, which is why we need to get creative, we need to get specific, and we need to approach our job listings and our job postings in a way that cuts through the noise. There's a company called the Dallas Restaurant and Bar that operates in Singapore. Now, it's a steakhouse. I guess if you're in Singapore and you want to create a steakhouse, you call it after Texas. You call it the Dallas Restaurant and Bar. And what's interesting is the Dallas Restaurant and Bar was looking for bartenders. So on day 0, before anybody had been hired, picture an individual who has bartending experience sitting at their home in Singapore, looking through the classified ads, and they come across this ad from the Dallas Restaurant and Bar. And as they pause to look at the ad, they're a little confused. They're not sure exactly what it means. Allow me to decipher. Fine. I'll have one more before I go home. See, the whole idea behind this ad is to create a moment that stands out. To say, if you're an experienced bartender, you're going to be able to decipher this babble. Oh, and by the way, they call out on the end that those lacking a great sense of humor need not apply. What I love about this ad is it pushes forward the experience of what it's going to be like to work at the Dallas Restaurant and Bar. They don't take themselves too seriously. They acknowledge some of the challenges of the role and the position in the actual advertisement where they're recruiting for the position. So the question becomes, when you think of your job listings or your position postings, do they capture the spirit of your organization? Or do they read like a bulleted list of what you are requiring for someone to apply? There's a huge opportunity to bring the experience of what we actually are, to showcase our culture, to put forward the unique things about our organization from the very beginning of the relationship. We then come to the accept phase. As a reminder, the accept phase has 2 component pieces. We extend an offer to the candidate, and if we're lucky, the candidate accepts our offer. One of the first things I do with clients that I work with in a consulting capacity is I review the existing materials that they are providing to their employees. And one of the things I always ask to see is a sample of the offer letter. Now, this is an actual offer letter. I've changed the name of the company to protect the guilty. And I want to call out 2 specific parts of this offer letter. The first one is right here, and we'll zoom in on the text. And this passage reads as follows: "The purpose of this letter is only to confirm our offer of employment. and is not an employment contract. Acme Corp is an at-will employer, and neither you nor Acme Corp is bound to continue the employment relationship. We're at the very beginning of the relationship, and this feels like the prenup of offer letters. It's like, hey, I like you, but not that much. Don't get too attached because I could decide to end this. You might decide to end this relationship. I'm not exactly sure where we are, but hey, congratulations, you got the job. There is such cognitive dissonance in this messaging. And the recovering lawyer in me feels compelled to say, I understand that there might be references that you need to make in your offer letters that you are an at-will employer. But if you're going to have a passage in your offer letter that feels like it was written by a lawyer, do yourself a favor and acknowledge that fact. Make fun of the lawyer. Make fun of the fact that it has to be there. Acknowledge the ridiculousness of the communication and how it might be impacting the experience of the recipient. The other passage that I thought was particularly fascinating in this offer letter had to do with the benefit plan. The benefit plan says you will be eligible to join the Acme Corp Group Benefit Plan on the first day of the month following the successful completion of 2 months of full-time employment. I went to law school, and I'm not entirely sure I understand what that means. You're talking about the benefits, the perks of being here, and it's like, you'll get them when it's here, but not here, after this, and then this. This is the offer letter. It's supposed to make people excited about the position, not confused about when they will or won't get access to the things they're promised. Counterbalance the experience of this offer letter with the experience created at the University of Notre Dame. Now, the University of Notre Dame is known for their football team, and their new coach, Marcus Freeman, who's in his second year, is very big on recruiting, and he has completely changed the way that Notre Dame approaches recruiting. Now, for those of you that are thinking, I did not sign on for a football example in this presentation, bear with me because I think it applies to every organization on the planet. Because every organization on the planet is recruiting from a very small pool of candidates. They only want the best of the best, and they're trying to do something remarkable by turning these amazing candidates into the most cohesive team that will help them achieve their goals. So how does Notre Dame do this? Well, on day one, the day the relationship begins, when you get the offer, they send you a package in the mail. The package looks like this, which if you've been to Notre Dame, you know that every game day, they have a program of what's happening during the game. It lists out all the players, talks about the history, talks about their opponent. And the covers of the game day program are always painted by an artist. Notre Dame commissioned this same artist to do a portrait of the young high school player that they're trying to recruit. So each player gets their own package that looks just like this. And when they open it up on the inside, it's a giant pop-up. It's crazy. No one's ever seen an offer letter like this. It shows the Golden Dome, touchdown Jesus. It's got the letter with the gold embossing. It's got a road that leads past the national championship trophy and the Heisman trophies, the Fighting Irish Leprechaun, the golden helmets. And it's got a little side panel you see there on the left that when they pull it out, the player, the high school football player who receives this, sees a photo of themselves wearing the Notre Dame uniform, showcasing what it will actually look like if you decide to accept the offer. So when you think about your offer letters, I ask you to consider, is our offer letter an invitation to the next chapter of this employee's life, or does it feel like a memo from a lawyer? We then come to the affirm phase. As a reminder, the affirm phase is that phase where the new hire begins to doubt the decision they just made. Some brand new research out of Gartner looked at 3,000 people who received and accepted job offers in Q1 of this year. So 3,000 people. And what they found is of those 3,000 people who received and accepted job offers, 50% backed out of that acceptance before their first day on the job. 50% of the people they surveyed didn't show up for the first day of work. They left during this affirm stage. In fact, they also found that 47% of the people who did accept the offer would be willing to accept other offers even after they had started on the first day on the job. Welcome to business in 2023, folks. It is a tough market for employers. But how can we stand out in these phases? How can we stand out, especially in this affirm phase, this normally quiet period between when the employee accepts the offer and when they show up for their first day on the job? There's a company called Trek that makes world-class bicycles. Think Tour de France lever bicycles. These are amazing bikes. They sell them all over the world. These are expensive bikes. These are heirloom bikes. They're incredible. And on day 3, a new employee receives a package in the mail. So they've accepted the job offer, but they haven't started on their first day on the job. They're in that quiet zone between accepting the offer on day 1. They're going to start the job 2 weeks later, maybe day 14. On day 3, in this quiet period, they get a package in the mail. And that package is this: the Trek Culture Book. It's a beautiful book with a red linen cover. And when you open it up, it tells the story of Trek, detailing the history of the organization. It points out that they're not a bike company, they're a hospitality company. They're all about experiences. It lists out all the names of all the employees that work for Trek. Now, some of you may be saying, Joey, but what happens when an employee leaves, or, we hire a new employee? They print a new culture book every year. And the book not only details the names of the employees, but it includes quotes and photographs from the employee talking about what a great place it is to work and why they love working here. And this is all wonderful, and it allows this new hire to kind of feel like they're part of the community before they officially join the community and they meet their coworkers. But what I love best about the Trek book are the final pages, where they detail some Trekisms. What are Trekisms, you might ask? Trekisms are words and phrases that are regularly used within the community. It's the local nomenclature, right? The local tongue that a new hire might not understand. I'd be willing to bet in every one of your companies, you have phrases, you have acronyms, you have things that you use in common parlance that a new hire isn't going to get. Trek puts all of that information forward. It's kind of like providing a language guide, a Rosetta Stone of sorts, to the new hire so that when they show up for the first day on the job, they're ready to understand what people are talking about. So the question you might want to ask yourselves is, as we're in that affirm phase leading up to them showing up for the first day of work, are we doing everything we can to make sure that our new hire is ready to talk the talk right away? Are we eliminating those barriers and making them feel like they're part of the community? We then come to the activate stage. As a reminder, this is where we want to energize the relationship. This is that day 1 of the job. Ogilvy and Mather is a world-renowned advertising company. They really broke onto the scene with their ad for the VW Beetle, and they continue to do ads for global brands around the world. They have an office in South Africa that does something unique on day 14. Day 14 being the first day on the job, because the employee accepted the job on day 1. They had given 2 weeks notice at their prior employer, and now they show up on day 14 ready to start their new job in person at South African offices of Ogilvy and Mather. And when they show up at their desk, there's a gift there. And the gift is the Ogilvy and Mather induction box. That's what they call it. This is a beautifully designed box that not only gives them a feel for the organization, but it speaks to the aesthetic and the commitment to quality and value that they're looking for in their team members. It includes a book called The Eternal Pursuit of Unhappiness, written by their founder, David Ogilvy. It talks about their core values. It gives a feeling for who they are. Now, what's interesting is providing some swag, providing a gift box on an employee's first day is not unique to Ogilvy and Mather. Many companies do this. But the question is, are you creating such an experience on that first day that they'll want to share it with the world? The reason I know that Impact and Uber and FanDuel and the other companies that I've featured in this slide deck create these type of swag-filled first days is because these are posts from social media of employees saying, can't believe I started the first day of job on the job here. I'm so excited to be at this firm. So the question for you becomes, will they post pictures of what you give them on their first day on the job? Or are you not really giving them anything? Or is what you're giving them not worthy of taking the time to take a picture and do a social media post about? We then come to the acclimate phase. As a reminder, this is when the employee is getting used to your way of doing business. There's a company called JLM Talent Partners that helps find architects and construction professionals for giant infrastructure processes. So they're constantly looking at these giant infrastructure projects. They're trying to recruit people to come be part of it. And as part of their internal process, they're training their employees on how to do this level of recruiting and placement. They're basically a staffing industry for the large construction world. Between day 15 and day 60, so the first 45 days-ish on the job, They have a three-pronged approach to making sure their people get up to speed. It begins with in-person interactions. A leader sits down with a new hire and explains in great specific detail the process of, for example, getting on the phone to talk to a recruit. They explain what their process is, why they do it. They teach them instead of just telling them about the job. Immediately after this conversation, that employee receives an email, and the email includes a documented checklist of everything that happens in that phone call making process. And they do this for every single task that a new hire is going to complete. The day after that, they get a link to a video. And that video is a different employee re-explaining the importance of this and showing them why we do it this way and the benefit of doing it this way, not only individually, but for the organization as a whole. In the acclimates phase, you want to ask yourself, are we really teaching them how, or are we telling them how to do the job? The distinction being, if we teach them, there's a likelihood of them understanding it and doing it going forward. We then come to the accomplish phase when the employee achieves the goal they had when they originally decided to start working with us. There's a company called SMO in the Mid-Atlantic that offers home heating oil, propane, and HVAC services. And they employ a large number of people in a call center. After that new hire has gone through the initial orientation, they are brought into a skills development program that is designed to increase the number of skills that their call center reps have and to fight against the heavy turnover that exists in most call centers. They gather everyone together and they introduce the customer service representative skill set pins. This is a set of lapel pins that talk about all the different skills you need to have as a call center rep. And the reason they did skill set pins, and these pins, by the way, are associated with quizzes and tests and learning modules. And as you complete them and earn your pin, you also earn a 5 to 10 cent pay raise on your hourly rate. Now, the reason they put this together is twofold. Number one, they wanted to educate their people. They wanted to constantly be pushing forward with skill sets. But number two, they wanted to give them a physical artifact, a proof point that they had accomplished the job. Now, why might they give them a lapel pin, you ask? Well, it's because the team was already wearing pieces of flair. They already had their lanyards that they wore to the office that they decorated with their own pins. And now the organization met the culture where it was already at by giving them a pin that signified their status, that signified the achievements they had made. So the question becomes, when tracking the goals of your employees and tracking their progress within your organization, do you mark their achievement with artifacts, physical, tangible proof, or mementos? Or is it just a pat on the back and, hey, thanks, and you got the promotion and let's get back to work? We then come to the adopt phase of the employee journey, when the employee becomes loyal to us and only us. There's a company in Canada called Roma Molding that makes world-class frames. Think of high-end framing for photographs, fine art, paintings, this type of thing. And they sell to galleries and high-end collectors around the world. Every 3 months, every 90 days, they shut down the entire factory, their sales team, all the folks that are building out these frames and making them available to customers around the world. They shut everything down for an in-person session where they award gifts. And here's the gift they award: these little cards. These cards that detail the 10 core values of the organization on the front with a colorful design. And on the back, it says the name of an employee, what they did to earn this core value card, how they lived the core value, and it's signed and dated by the person who's nominating them for living this core value. These cards are placed throughout the organization. They're available in the factory. They're available in the headquarters office. So folks can grab cards off the rack anytime they want. And then every 90 days, we're also doing this. And the employees collect these as badges of honor. They collect them as proof points that their peers, their colleagues, their coworkers think they're doing a great job. They've become so prolific that they're hung throughout the offices. The team at Roma Molding is all about reinforcing their core values and letting their people know how much they appreciate when they live these values on a day-to-day basis. So the question we might ask is, how are you continuing to reinforce the key behaviors you want your team members to show? Which brings us to the 8th phase and the final phase, the advocate phase, where our employees become loyal to us and only us. They're actively recruiting other people to come join our organization. They're singing our praises far and wide. There's a company in Canada called Brasa Peruvian Kitchen. Brasa is a quick serve restaurant. Think of it as a fast food place where you can get Peruvian food. And their founder, Michel Falcone, has a really interesting approach to how he thinks about the hours that his people work. In most fast food quick serve restaurants, the hourly employee is the core of the operation, and how those employees spend their hours at work really matter. Which is why it's so interesting that the Michelle has set it up that every week, so every 7 days, every employee has 1 hour on their shift while they're at work in person where they are required to get on their phone. Wait, Joey, they require their employees to be on the phone at work? I fight this problem with my team all the time. They're always on their phone. I want them to be doing the job. Well, at Brasa, being on your phone is part of the job because they want you to spend the first 30 minutes of that time looking through your social media feed, trying to identify friends of yours that would be good coworkers at Brasa. And the next 30 minutes, either reaching out to them or talking to your direct manager to figure out how to make a strategic invitation to see if they'd be open to considering a position at Brasa. Now, if you know anything about the quick serve restaurant industry, the annual average turnover is 144%. These numbers are staggering. How can you run a business where everybody you hire on day one in January 1st is gone and half of the people you hire to replace them are gone by the time you get to the end of the year? Well, Brasa changes the equation. They change the way they treat their people. And as a result, their turnover is only 14.8%. It takes it to 1/10 of the industry average. They also have a 76% net promoter score. People love working there. And when your employees love coming to work, they're going to love inviting their friends to come to work as well. So the question becomes, do your best people recruit their best friends, the smartest people they know, to come work with you as well? Those are the 8 phases. I know we went through a lot of them in a very quick fashion, talking about the 6 tools that you can use in each of those phases to create those kind of remarkable experiences in the first 100 days and beyond. All right, Robert, with your permission, I want to conclude by giving away some gifts. I believe that leaders are readers. I want to offer some gifts and prizes to the folks that were kind enough to sit in, including copies of some of my favorite books that have been written on employee experience, as well as if you want a copy of Never Lose an Employee Again, happy to send you one of those. It's real simple. All you have to do is text the phrase first 100 to 66866. So first 100, capital F, no space, first 100 to 66866. You're going to send that text. You're going to get a response back that says, what's your email? You enter your email address. And then you're going to get a response that says, great, go back to watching Joey. What's going to happen when I get your email? Well, tomorrow I'm going to send you a quick little email. The quick little email is going to have a link to a survey. And the survey is going to say, what'd you think of your time with the Elevate team today, talking about how to never lose an employee again? You let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, which examples you like the best, what actions you're planning to take going forward. And everybody who completes the survey gets the chance to win free prizes, free copies of books to help you continue to adopt these type of philosophies within your own organizations. Friends, we've got 100 days to get this right. We've got 100 days to lay the foundation of a remarkable employee experience, and day one begins tomorrow. What are you going to do to create the kind of remarkable experiences that will keep your people coming back for more? You all have been amazing. I so appreciate your time, your attention, your focus. Thanks again. If I can ever be of support, real easy to find me. It's joey@joeycoleman.com. Reach out. I'd be happy to help.
Thank you, Joey.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks to everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.